Good morning and welcome to another Meditation Minute. This morning, if you don't mind, I'm going to actually consult my journal because there's been a lot of reflection going on of late. About a week ago, I met a very interesting gentleman. He's one of the world's leading microbiologists specializing in the creation of probiotics. He's given me some excellent advice about prebiotics and probiotics and the healthfulness of the gut in overall health. And if you follow in the book, you know I'm a big believer in that already. And basically, he has some of the patents on creating pre and probiotics from human bacteria, which is not typically the case, I've learned. Increase the amount of fiber in your diet. He says it should be 3 to 4 times the recommended allowance. But anyway, now we got on the discussion of microdosing. And surprisingly, he's done a lot of research that's not been published, and hence why I'm not saying his name. And so anyway, the microdosing, something I had done a long time ago, but then I got away from it not because it wasn't helpful. I didn't feel I needed the alertness that comes with it, that a lot of people expect from it. Surprisingly, he told me that it's not its greatest benefit. His testing, and it's a double-blind test, it's never been published, shows that there's a great degree of cardiac health coming from microdosing in psilocybin. As I take it as part of my morning routine now, about an hour into it, I start to feel the effects of that microdose. It's not so much hallucinogenic, as it is a sharpening, if you will. But it's made my meditations much more intense because it's something new. And I've had a couple reflections. One in particular, the other morning, led to a couple things. And again, I confronted the darkness in me, fear, that I've talked about before. That is an underlying theme throughout my life, probably baked into my DNA and my mind over millennia of my ancestry, and then filtered through my prefrontal cortex of my realization of fear. And now I'm the person who is unfolding all of that and discovering it. I wrote a quote in the middle of this meditation. I had a thought. I choose to acknowledge the light despite the coexistence of darkness. In the very Zen Buddhist tradition, it's we witness both at the same time, equally. But I'm acknowledging the light within me because probably due to the microdosing, that meditation was very different and my mind was very active, and I recognized, like I said, that predominance of fear. And by acknowledging that fear, I felt it melt away. I surrendered to the fear. And as it left, I was out of the meditation and I was heading to work and beginning my day. I didn't immediately fill it with confidence. I felt actually an emptiness, a coldness, a rawness, to which I knew it was my job to fill it with awe and wonder and love and grace and gratitude and compassion and peace and joy. And so I sought those things out in order to fill that void, which I had surrendered the fear away. But I got to tell you, I felt a visceral change in my mind-body connection as a result of that recognition of the fear, the releasing of the fear, and the replacing of that. And also, I gave great gratitude at the end of that meditation for allowing myself to connect in that way. I'm very open to recognizing that when we ask questions of ourselves, of the universe, of universal knowledge, of God, we're often answered. It's often subtle, and we have to really pay attention. And so a series of events have unfolded over the last week or so that have been really interesting. The one thing was that I came across a quote, the most important spiritual discovery of all time. It was, I think, in Pathos website, and it was written by a guy named Tom Pappas, who I honestly wasn't familiar with, but it caught my interest. He wrote an article and he was talking about that he asked his Alexa for a meditation, and Alexa said, "God and I are one. I am one with God," and it repeated it a couple times, and it struck him that it was interesting, and it reminded him of Michael Singer, and I'm a big fan of Michael Singer. and his early writings, which he connected oneness with God. And so, anyway, this article goes on to recognize another chief psychiatrist at the National Institute of Psychiatry and Neurology in Budapest, Hungary, named a Dr. Frexa. He wrote something called The Inner Paths to Outer Space. But anyway, what I like about it was something I've written about, and I hadn't read this, but he made the connection that different religions throughout history have had different perceptions and interpretations of God. However, they all conclude that God is within us, and hence my notes. Christianity, the kingdom and heaven is within you, and that's attributed, of course, to Jesus Christ. Sufism, to know yourself at the deepest level is to know God. In Islam, those who know themselves know their Lord. Judaism, he is in all, and all is in him. Confucianism, those who know their own nature know heaven. Taoism, in the depths of the soul, one sees the divine, the one. In Buddhism, look within you, you are the Buddha. And then finally, in Hinduism, Atman, which is individual consciousness or conscious awareness, as I refer to it, and Brahman, universal consciousness, collective consciousness, universal knowledge, God's soul, are one. And so there you go. I mean, there's all the isms, right, stacked on top of each other, and they're all basically saying the same thing: God is within us. And the ability to find God is the most important discovery. And that's a quote from Fresca, but it also brings me back to, Sam Harris. And Sam Harris's quote of the most important lesson he ever learned was the ability to recognize consciousness without thought, before thought. It's that subtlety of recognizing in that moment, being aware of consciousness before it is translated into thought, feeling, or emotion, or anything going on in the self. And that self-awareness and that collective consciousness are indeed one. They are indeed one within you, in all of us, and they are the singular point. And that is the point that the Zen Buddhists talk about, right? Not one, not two. Anyway, I just thought it was an interesting perspective of how a lot of these things all come together. That led finally to a person who does a podcast called The Superior Self, Trey Downs. And Trey has interviewed, again, somebody I wasn't familiar with, but I've been reading a little bit about him and watching some of his podcasts. And he's interviewed 500 or so spiritualists. So the idea is, what is spiritualism? And he had a really, really good observation that I really enjoyed. And this one was actually just the other day. And it kind of tied up all the thoughts and the reflections that I've been having. And so I want to share it with you. When he's interviewed all these people, there's common themes that come about. One, that we are all one. Two, that there is a higher self. Three, that the outer world is a hologram or a simulation or a dream of some sort. And that consciousness is fundamental to this reality. And so you've heard me talk about, my own personal beliefs within there. But here's the part that I really enjoyed. He made spirituality akin to training to fight. And I like this because I spent a lot of time studying the martial arts. And so training to fight, I can assure you, is considerably different than being in a street fight. And it reminds me of the quote by Mike Tyson: "Yeah, everybody has a plan to get it punched in the face." And it's true, because there are no rules in a street fight. But when you train completely with rules in a controlled environment. And so you learn to build instinct, but it's the instinct that kicks in when you're in the street fight. Well, spirituality is very much the same thing. We practice in a controlled environment. We practice focus and connection and calmness and oneness and understanding energy and flowing energy and seeing that duality and finding silence and being able to stop time in there and in that present moment, that now, of connecting that inner self of consciousness with the universal consciousness at the same time, and finding that subtle space. But what he brought, and he says it's easy to do in those settings, but can you do it when you really need it? And he says the ability to recognize the universal God in whatever and in everything. Can you stand amid chaos and remain centered, knowing you are the creator of your reality? Second, can you love your children, your wife? I'm extending this, your family, your friends, anyone without needing that love reciprocated. Third, can you see the flaws in others as a reflection of yourself? And I'm going to come back to this one because this is where it connected to me. And can you look at a heroin addict swaying in the street and recognize them as just another aspect of you, right? We are that one step away. It is one of the infinite probable us's that we choose to objectively observe and collapse into our reality within there. And can you look at your enemies and still hold compassion for them? And so perhaps he recognizes, or he posits, that perhaps the goal of spirituality isn't to achieve something, but to fully experience each moment, no matter where we are in that journey. And I'll finish with his quote: be where you are, regardless of where you are, be there in love. And so, Trey, wherever you are, that's a beautiful quote. I think it's awesome. And I'll close with this. The reflection is that I had seen a little reel as you know, I have three daughters, 7, 5, and 2. And as you could imagine, at a 57-year-old dad, sometimes it gets pretty challenging. And so when I heard Trey's quotes, can I find my spirituality? Can I find God? Can I find inner peace in those moments of turmoil when I'm not being my best self? And so the other one is I tend to be critical of people sometimes, and probably the most harsh critic of my family sometimes when they're not meeting my expectation. I know, right? The goal is to get rid of those expectations, but sometimes it becomes overwhelming. But it was really a recognition that when I'm being critical of others, I'm really seeing their flaws or my flaws in them. It was just a reminder that the journey is never done. I love the interconnectedness that was the universe, and fervently understand that the universe was speaking to me through those moments. And pieced it together over the course of the week. So thank you to my friend who's set me on the path of doing some microdosing again and having some great insights. And thank you to Trey Downs for some nice spiritual insights. Thank you all for listening. I appreciate it. And we'll see you next time. Happy meditating. Bye.